On this episode of Rethink Real Estate, we're welcoming back Greg Fowler. Greg is a marketing genius with Liongate Media, also is the host of the podcast Real Estate Titans. And Greg's extensive experience in the marketing landscape, I wanted to ask him today as we start off 2025 and people are evaluating certain things about their business. This episode is about brand equity. Brand equity, how do we evaluate it? Whether or not you've got it by default, or what is your brand equity currently if you've been in real estate a little while? If you are looking to build a different type of brand equity, or what does your brand really speak to? Who does it speak to? And evaluating all of that along the way is a difficult thing to do. And it needs some format of a process. And sometimes it needs reflection and feedback from people external to the real estate community as well. So Greg and I talk about how to reflect, how to plan for something different, or how to enhance something that you've already got. Hopefully the episode's helpful. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Greg, welcome back to Rethink Real Estate.
Ben, honor and a pleasure, my friend. I can't believe that it's been more than a year since I was on last. And the fact that I'm back, hopefully is a good sign. So I can't wait to provide more value to your audience and just have a great conversation with you as always.
Well, I thought that it was really poignant to have you speak to the audience as we dive into the marketing side of things. And in 2025, early on in the planning process for people coming into that, marketing and brand equity is something that comes up a great deal in conversations I have with agents. Now, they might not say brand equity, but they always talk about, well, how do I enhance my brand, or what am I doing in a marketplace? So how would somebody evaluate their own brand equity in a market that they've been working in a while? And then this is probably a two-part question, is that how do they stand out more in their market? Because I think that you've got to evaluate where you are, and then you've got to try and understand where you want to go. And most people want to have more presence and brand equity within the market that they primarily work in. So how do they do that?
Well, Ben, and the way that you had crafted those kind of two-part questions is beautiful because it's come up time and time again. I mean, it is the question of all questions. What is a brand? How do I develop it? What's really going on there? To me, it start from the root is a brand in of itself isn't a logo or a fancy slogan. It's an emotional connection to a person, product, or service. Now, we're talking about real estate specific here, right? This is the world that we're in. It's direct relationships. So it is more so to a person and not so too much a logo. And for me, it is the emotional connection that is with one person to another. When they're thinking about buying or selling a property in any form or fashion, are they thinking of you as an individual? Is it positive or is it negative? I think that you start with that kind of framework, because if you're thinking about, I need to get the right colors, I need to get the right slogan, I need to have this whole cultural thing dialed in. It's like, understand who you are first and understand what that means to your target audience and demographics. And is it something that they can emotionally connect with and think, yeah, that's my guy, that's my girl, that's the person that I want to work with or align with when I'm looking to buy, sell, anything, whatever product, service, or brand you have.
That's so interesting, Greg. That is so interesting in a sense that many people will start off with the brand, and they will start off with the colors, and they'll make sure that it looks sexy, attractive, innovative, whatever you want to say. But they don't evaluate themselves in the way that they're emanating that brand or the way that they're emanating the message to the community. I think that's probably more important in the beginning.
It is, because all the rest of it works itself out after that. If you start with the main thing, which is who we are and why we're doing what we do, what does our origin story look like? I think that it really breaks every aspect down. You do it in a sequential order. Now, the way that we always develop this when we're looking at this from a brand-centric standpoint is you got to build the brand, you have to identify your client, and then you have to look at it for what is your digital first impression. Well, you can't evaluate and break down what your digital first impression is if you don't really know who you are and you don't really know who you serve, because it has to all be in alignment and it has to be authentic. Authenticity is key. So a lot of people would say, hey, I want to work in the ultra luxury market and segment. And they're basing it off of, it needs to look a certain way and sound a certain way. Is it authentic to you? Is it true to you? Is it really a part of your life and your heritage? Or is it something that you're fitting yourself into. And the inauthenticity reads true. I mean, people know
Right.
if you're being honest and showing integrity or not, if you're listening with intent or you're just waiting for the next step.
Yep.
So when I break down the brand building phase, and I say this in a very specific way, there's a few exercises that we go through. And I think the first one that you're looking at is, what is your unique value proposition? So there's a few questions that I have everybody answer. Now, this isn't something that you're necessarily going to do right in front of somebody, but you want to take the time to craft this out. Now, it doesn't matter if you're brand new into the business or you're a seasoned pro. Everyone should be reevaluating what their brand message is, what it does or does not do out in the community that they're looking to target. And is there better ways to articulate that message with all of your brand, with all of your marketing that's put out there?
Speaking of message though, Greg, I just want to double click on that. Do you think it's a categorical mistake for an agent to just try and canvas everybody? Because when you sit down and you look at the different audiences that you're trying to attract, whether it be luxury, whether it be family, whether it be young professionals, whether it be whatever, I like breaking it all into a category. I don't know any realtor that wouldn't say to me that I'm trying to get everybody. I want to get every sale. I want to get every buyer. I want to get all that. They try and cater to absolutely everyone, which muddles the brand message or muddles their brand or muddles them. I don't know.
No, you're absolutely spot on, Ben. I mean, that is spot on. The riches are in niches. And I think that ultimately the tighter you can understand the individuals you're trying to serve and attract into your world, the more you can understand what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what problems they're having, what solutions you're able to provide to that specific person in their journey at that time to buy, sell, whatever the case may be. So as time goes on, you can continue to establish more niches or different verticals or pillars. I'm not to say, hey, you can only do one type of thing, but ultimately you need to really understand that wholeheartedly and connect in a meaningful way. Don't just try to be everything to everyone, because you're going to end up connecting with no one. And I think that that's crucially important to understand. So that's a great point that you mentioned. To me, I always look at it in the basis of, what the origin story is. Like, I want to know you as a person first and foremost. Now, it's not the most comfortable thing for professionals and producers to talk about themselves. It's not about us. It's about our clients. It's about their needs first. But ultimately, we need to understand who you are and where you come from and what your business by design is. So I know that if I align with you or not, is this somebody that I trust, I get to know and actually want to establish a relationship with or not? So it roots with the origin. The problem is if people are vanilla and generalistic and generic, like, I love helping buyers and sellers with their dreams.
Oh,
Okay,
you're
you're killing me, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if I hear a story of your upbringing and what brought you into the business and what challenges and successes you had along the way and what you've learned and experienced, I get to know you as a human first. And that's
What do you?
immediate connectivity.
Sorry, what do you say to people that can't share that story? What I say we can't, they just won't. Like again, there's a lot of people within real estate that don't want to tell you where the origin or why. And there's a lot of people that'll just be upfront, is that they just are in it for the money. They're not in it to really help people. They're just in it from a transaction perspective and whatever it is. Like, if we're speaking to both parts of this, is that you've got the people that really do it to serve, and you've got the other parties that are just in it from a transaction perspective because it is a low barrier to make a lot of money.
Sure, sure. And there's hybrids of that too. There's some that love it both. Whatever that journey is for you, you need to be honest. If it's
Yep.
true, if you're all about the money and, hey, this is a great industry for me to build a lot of revenue and legacy into my life financially, and this is why I do it, let me know up front in a very specific way. Because guess what? There are a lot of professionals that are just in it for the money as well. And they get the money and they continue with their life. Now, what are they doing with that money? And what else are they building along the way? Because it isn't just about the money. It's saying, hey, I'm generating the money because I like to do this, or because I'm building this business. What passions are attached to that money? Start with the root of that story, but then continue down the line. Because if you're a serial entrepreneur, or you have opportunities to continue to grow and connect with others that are past the money, you're going to get those people that are going to get it, but then you're also going to have other opportunities to connect. And you don't have to share every woe that you've ever had in your life, right?
Okay.
We're not talking about the worst things in your life and air everything out. You can go as far back as you're comfortable sharing, but those details, I find, at least the deepest relationships that I have into my life, are people that we've been able to kind of open the door and just have an honest and open conversation about life and goals and experiences. And it's not to say that you can't transact by not doing that, because you can. People do it every day. They've done it for years. But I think that if you're looking at it for the long haul and for the bigger picture, which is helping people more so than anything, because the money follows, you're going to be better off just getting comfortable doing it. And
Yeah.
everybody's got different placements to that, right? Where you
Yeah.
start and where you end isn't necessarily going to be the same thing.
Greg, I want to talk about sort of my own experience in real estate because of how young I was when I started selling. The whole preface around I'm in this to help somebody definitely wasn't in the back of my mind. It was like, hey, this is a low barrier to entry for me to make an exceptional amount of money. So I was very transactional based. And the one thing that I definitely was within my messaging to people within my listing presentations was, hey, if you want a friend, get a dog. If you want a real estate professional that's going to get you the most amount of money, I'm the guy to list your home with. And but I want to be clear about something, is that I don't know that it's not that I don't know. I do know that it wasn't the foundation of building a longevity business within that marketplace. You know, I was definitely building my business off a model of a gentleman by the name of Benjamin Smith. He sold real estate in Pullenvale and Kenmore and these areas out of Brisbane. The funny thing is that Ben had a lady that he really pissed off, for lack of better terminology. She had a lot of money locally, and she got a billboard and it put above the Kenmore State School that said, "Do not trust this man." It was a photo of Ben Smith, right? Now, the funny part about this is you would have thought that his real estate career was over. Benjamin Smith was known to be a prick, but he was known to get the highest possible sale price for anyone's property. And it was funny to see what won out. He definitely won out as the market leader, regardless of reputation. Now, I'm not saying that that is the right approach, but I think that there's got to be a merging. If you can merge that hybrid, as you said, I think that there's a serious opportunity in that.
I agree. And again, what a great story as you're talking about that, Ben. But to his defense, he owned it. He owned the fact that he had that demeanor, but he also had the professionalism to continue to get the job done to the highest of levels. Again, just crafting whatever the authentic truth to you is, unapologetically so, is what you want to command. That's it. And so there's not a right or wrong way to do it. And whether you're on more on one side or the other, or you're in the middle, I find that, to your point, the biggest aspect of connecting with a larger amount of people that are really in it for you as well, it is a hybrid of the both. To show personal and professional, to really make sure that the best interests of that individual are at heart. People, it's a Maya Angelou quote. I mean, people forget what you said, but they're not going to forget how you made them feel, roughly, give or take. I might butcher that. But so I think that that's an important thing. It's an emotional thing. I mean, all of this is based off of emotions and connectivity. I mean, whether you thought that individual was a prick or not, I mean, there was some emotional connection to the consumer, to him, to saying, well, that's the guy I want to go with. There was something there. So it's dialing that in, starting from you, and then really making sure that it resonates across all of your branding. And now that branding in and of itself, remember, is the emotional connection, where if somebody thinks of you and or brand, product, or service, that's really what it is. It's what somebody thinks when you're not in the room about you is your true brand. Right. So if you're having a private conversation with somebody and marketing happens to come up, and you're like, hey, yeah, I got a bud, Greg. He's a super great guy. You know, he does a few things with marketing. That's my brand. You literally just utilized my brand right there. And it's behind the closed doors conversation. So that's all about really building that emotional connection and that currency with the individual. But I think your origin story, starting for as far back as you want to go, and I think going down, doing a deep dive onto what your why is. Now, you stated it earlier on, which I love that. You're like, earlier on in your career, the big why wasn't to make this big impact, to leave legacy and help families. It was a means to an end, bringing in the revenue, right? So I think ultimately you have evolution into your brand, you have evolution into your why, but start where you start. Not everybody has an incredible story and a background and overcoming adversity and really connecting in a big way. That's fine. Start where you're at, but be honest with it. Like, why are you doing this? And what does it mean to you? And what are your goals with all this? I think this is important to really articulate it. As you base it down, If you have clients in the business, you can take a step back and say, well, what do your clients say about you? And I'm not talking about the sunshine and roses sort of things, but
No.
what key indicators do you see time and time again, or hear time and time again, that your clients are thinking and feeling of you?
Like you said, how do they explain you to others? Because I think that in the early days, I would have been explained as, oh, he's a killer. Now, that doesn't appeal to most people, but like at the end of the day, that was what I was going for. Now, I don't know that there's any longevity in that, like whatever, but the thing that I'm trying to sort of get an understanding of here, Greg, from your perspective, is that there's I feel like the pendulum swings too far to each side. You've either got the one person who's doing a million transaction, and it's so clear to me when I look, maybe because I'm in real estate, that they're trying to be at arm's length from the client and just do as many transactions as possible. Right. And then there's the other one that's like, oh, I'm not really in this for the money. I'm in this for the pleasure of, I love property and I love people. It's like, shut up. Okay. So that pendulum swing really bothers me in that in the industry. And finding that happy medium, I feel like you don't stand out enough. Like I don't, how do you feel about just articulating and being so poignant with, this is what I want my reputation to be? Is that good marketing or is it not?
That's where you got to start. I think you have to start with a basis of understanding, and then you have to put essentially the walk to the talk. You have to live that. You have to project that, and you have to have feedback out into the world, right? So we can say that we are this type of person and this is what is happening, but what do we do every day? And remember, a brand isn't built overnight either. It takes time. If you think about anybody who's built a business, it doesn't happen overnight. So to build your reputation, just as the same as the brand, takes time. Now, if you have information based off of it and you have a plan to execute, you can get there sooner. You can have a lot larger of an effect and an impact. But most people don't. They think of it as an afterthought. They're focused on the wrong things. And so starting into the basis of what we're talking about here and making sure that that's dialed in. Now, I'll give you an example to this. An exercise that I like to do, and sometimes this is, it works for certain people depending on what your background is. And I use this quite a bit. Her name's Paula. Big shout out to Paula if you're watching this. And we had this exercise, and it was a group of people. And I said, hey, I need to know a little bit more about you. And not just on the business side, but what are some things that you're really passionate about? Because besides the fact that you might be a killer and excellent at what you do, I need to make sure that you're standing out to me as a person, right? First and foremost, it's what's in it for me. I don't care about the accolades and how good you are and how many awards you've won, how many homes you've sold. At the end of the day, if I know that you're in it for me or not, that's going to be the deciding factor. Now, in addition to, if you've won awards and you've done high volume, and you have a great reputation that's out there, in addition, it's not going to hurt you, but it's certainly not going to get most of the people who don't know you yet. Now, I'm not talking about direct referral. I'm talking about the majority of the population, which doesn't know us. But bringing out Paula, she gave great examples, and she came through this exercise, and I said, give me the information and what you actually love to do outside of real estate. So, one thing was that she's a grandmother. So that was something that was very important to her, is being present with her grandchildren. Now, that might not work with everybody. That's fine, but that was something that she stuck out. Secondarily, she loved to drink bourbon. She's a big bourbon drinker, and that's something she's done her whole life, not just because it's trendy, but she just loves bourbon. Hand in hand with that, she loves a good cigar. So that's something that she enjoys. She enjoys bourbon and a cigar. She loves motorcycles, Harleys specifically. So as Paula was breaking these interests down to me, things that she does every day, hanging out with these people that are truly authentic, deep ingrained into her, that's her brand in and of itself. So she's the motorcycle riding, bourbon drinking, cigar smoking, granny realtor. That's really her brand in and of itself. Now, that's so authentic to Paula, it's not even funny. And guess what I tell you? Every single group that she drinks bourbon with and smokes cigars with, she's the go-to realtor. Every single motorcycle rally that she goes to, everyone knows that she's a realtor. It's not about the real estate. It's about really looking at it from a connected and emotional standpoint. But if she didn't put the thought into it and to say, hey, this is who I am. Now, how do I translate that out so more people outside of my sphere know this? Now, some people might be turned off and say, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't ride motorcycles. I'm not a grandparent, I don't care. That's fine. you are repelling and attracting simultaneously. And that's what a good brand will do in addition. So Paula automatically attracts business, not just in the physical, but all of her content that goes out digitally to people that are also engaged with those pieces of content. So, but you got to start by putting some thought into it. Now, not everybody has all these hobbies either, right? Those are very specific. So, but I use it as an example. No matter how boring you think you are, you do things outside of the biz. And I think it's important to articulate that in some form or fashion. Add that into your brand if it's authentic to you. And again, you're not just a one-dimensional person. You're not just a real estate robot. And I think that that's an important thing too. This is what we found that has been massively effective. And that translates across every vertical for marketing. We're not just talking about organic, but we're talking about paid metrics as well. But it starts with those thoughts, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. When it comes to evaluating your brand, I think you've got to look external to your real estate office or your real estate coaches or people that are too familiar with real estate, because I think that then you become what they think you need to become versus more what your target audience ultimately is. How do you think an agent has to, one, identify a target audience, and then two, identify what their brand is by default? Because the likelihood is that there's someone watching this at the moment / listening to this at the moment that's been in real estate for a period of time, and they probably haven't done any of this stuff. So they have a brand equity already that they're trying to evaluate. And then do they double down on that, or?
Well, it depends on what they've already created, Ben. It's a great question. I think you really got to look at it from an unfiltered eye. And this is the best thing that I always say. When we get to the digital footprint, like the full self-audit, ask yourself this honest question. If you Googled yourself right now and you didn't know who you were, would you hire you? Would you hire you? Most people would say no. I'm just flat out honest. Yeah. Their digital space is miserable. It's not showing anything that we really need to know. And in fact, it's actually doing more harm than good. So that's the first line of defense that I would say is look yourself up. If you didn't know you and you were your ideal client, would you want to hire yourself? And some people might say, yeah, I have dialed it in. Yes, I would. But I will tell you, most people, at least at the baseline, they've got work to do. And I don't care how long you've been doing the business or if you're brand new. I think taking a shot at this and really understanding the importance of that is crucial. Evaluating your client is the avatar inception sort of standpoint, which I like to consider. Understanding who you are first is first and foremost, because again, you're going to want to identify clientele that is authentic to who you are and the brand that you're talking about and building. So the closer you are to your ethos, your interior, to what you've built in a brand, that your avatar is going to be, the deeper and faster that connection is going to happen in an exponential way. The further away it is from who you genuinely and truly are, or who you genuinely and truly want to be, it's going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be very difficult. Now, it's not to say it's impossible, but you want to be honest with that and work your way through this process. So identifying your ideal client for me is, it's an amazing exercise to kind of break down. I always use this nerdy analogy because, I love film and especially 80s films, but I mean all films in general. There's an old movie out of the 80s and it's called Weird Science. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, Ben.
No.
So it's a nerdy science fiction film. There's some people that might remember it back from there, but there's two young guys, Gary and Wyatt. And essentially they are computer nerds, and they're trying to build on a computer the perfect woman. And so what happens is lightning strikes the house as they're building this perfect woman, and poof, Lisa appears, right? The perfect woman. Sci-fi, all that stuff, and funny humor, that sort of thing. But Gary and Wyatt were very specific on building this perfect woman, down to the finest of details. And the idea is that's where you want to start. You want to be like Gary and Wyatt and say, who is my ideal client? If I could create my ideal client on a computer or paint a perfect picture, who are they? Now, it's not just to say, it's just as simplistic as, age range, geographic location, size and lifestyle for family or milestones into their life and or career. you want to go as deep as you possibly can into that individual. Some people can play based off of the clients that they've served. Who are their favorite clients that they've done business with in the past? What are the consistencies that are there that you can really hone in on and build this avatar or series of avatars, because you can have more than one. Once you line out those details, then you can ask yourself, how do I personally connect with that person that I just built? What does my brand align with them? Or what can I overlap and connect to make sure that I'm enhancing and speaking to that person one-to-one? I think that's extremely important to do, because a lot of people say, well, I'll work with any buyer or any seller in this geographic location at this price range. Kind of just stop it at that.
Yeah, but it's not even price range. It's kind of like whoever will talk to me and maybe
And anybody. And again, just to have the intentionality to build your brand, to build the avatars very specifically that you want to bring into your world and actually utilize and have as clientele, I think that's crucially important. But why this matters is because it sets the whole tone for your marketing. It sets the whole tone, because you know who you are. You now know who you're serving or wanting to attract into your world. So then you ask yourself, I know these avatars like the back of my hand, or I have a really good idea who these people are, what their needs are, what their wants are, what their desires are, where they're currently into their life and where they're going. What are the next milestones or series? What solutions do I have for them? What value can I bring to their life that is enhancing them, that is building my brand equity and reputation in their mind, but also attracting them organically into my world? That's going to be based off of, now you got your content structure. You're going to know that the photos, the videos, the copywriting that you're going to be creating are going to be authentic to you and to your brand that we just discussed, that are authentic and valuable to those core audiences or target audience, that are really actually providing value, knowledge, information, education, entertainment to them. And that sets it for everything out. So does that help, Ben?
It does. Now, discipline to stick to this, because typically people will build a brand by default. There's not a great deal of people that build it by design. So where is the level of accountability? Like, obviously there's your services that people can bring you into the equation to help with that accountability to their brand equity or their brand in general. But I just feel like we are such a business by design versus, business by default versus business by design.
And again, not to, shameless plug for anything for Lion Bolt, you don't need us to do this. Yeah. Taking the time to really understand, answering a series of 21 questions, that's all you really need. Understand who you are, right? Answering a series of questions, anywhere from 10 to 15 of your client avatar. We have a client avatar inception worksheet. You just kind of go through, really break it down. That's going to take you an hour, 2 hours, maybe at the most, if you really take your time, build up multitudes of pillars.
You could probably look at your past deals as well, right?
Your past clients, your past deals. I think ultimately what I like to do is the comprehensive market analysis. So as you're doing your brand and building it, and as you're looking at your avatar and you're really building these things, or your avatars, you can do research, market research. Who is doing what you are doing at a higher level, or somebody that is doing it at a much higher level that you want to do? Look at what they are branding themselves as, right? So follow them on different social platforms, opt into their newsletters, see what they are positioning themselves with their content that's going on. What pillars are they coming through? What do their landing pages look like? This gives you, what are their bios? How are they structuring their messaging? How are they introducing themselves on short form, mid form, long form? That is going to help you also articulate yours. Now, you might not be on that level, but that's okay. They've taken years and years to figure this out and craft this out. Take bits and pieces and then make sure that it is true and authentic to you, and package your own brand up. Now, the truth of the situation is you're never really going to know what this looks like until you bring it to market. A lot of this is research and development. It's putting the pen to paper, and then putting it out there on the platforms, creating content and going to market. You're going to get feedback. Once you receive feedback and you start to connect, or lack thereof of connectivity, you really need to evaluate it. A lot of times I ask people that are close to you, but not necessarily the closest. Because the ones that are closest to us, they remember us when we were in high school, and maybe they look at us from a different lens. Somebody that knows you well, but maybe doesn't know your entire history, after you put this together, have them look at it. Say, hey, would you mind taking a look at some of these sites? If you read this or saw this or watched this or looked at this, is this true to me? Like, do you think that this is representing of me? Now, that might be a team member or a broker owner or somebody that you really trust. But I think that's going to be very helpful before you actually fully launch and bring it. But you're never really going to know, Ben. This is a lot of this is trial and error. As you continue to enhance your brand, and you'll figure out pockets in your niches and what niches you connect with more or less, then you're going to double or triple down on some. You might forget some others. Yep. And again, you evolve as a person into your life too, right? Your time frames change. I think that what you're doing as an individual personally changes. What you know as a professional adjusts as well. So I think that building your brand is one thing, but continuing your brand is ongoing. It's not a destination. It's a continued journey nonstop. That's my perspective.
I think that there's a part of this you said before that had me thinking, and I'm going back and forward in my head as you were talking, is that the looking at what other people do and then trying to copy what they do or see how they're branding themselves and things along those lines. Does that take away from the genuine nature of what it is? That's part one of the question. I'm doing a good job of part 2, 3, 4, and 5 of these questions as well. Second part of that question is, why are realtors so adverse to copying people when it clearly is working? So it's a little bit of a contradicting question of part 1 and part 2, but yeah. So why, does it take away from the genuine feel of who they are and what they're doing if they're copying? But why is it that people don't copy more often? Because they're trying to stand out? I don't know.
I think for me, in my perspective, does it take away? It can if you let it. So when I encourage somebody to follow certain individuals that are doing it at a high level that you respect, it's for really an overarching feel. What feeling do you get? What are they putting out there that you can take bits and pieces and make your own? You do not want to be a carbon copy. I don't care how successful they are. You're never going to be a better version of them. So that the authenticity comes into play. So yes, you can go down that slippery slope and you can try to be a carbon copy of somebody, that exact T, the way they dress, the way they talk, the way their brand is, how they're communicating with their clientele, all their media that's coming out. But it's not going to be truly authentic to you. You're better off taking a step back, going a little bit slower, and building your authentic brand. Because if you're talking about long term, that's the worst thing that you can do, is try to emulate somebody down to the T, in my opinion, perspective, for your brand. Now, why people don't do it enough, I think it's an ego thing. I think they look at it and say, well, you know what, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to kind of figure this out on my own. And that's a big mistake. Why would you try to reinvent the wheel when somebody's already been through all the mental gymnastics? Whether you appreciate this gentleman or not, or whether you know him or not, Ryan Serhant has built an incredible brand in and of itself, right? And some people would argue, yes, there's Netflix and Bravo that had to do with a lot of that and all the things. But at the end of the day, there's been a lot of producers that have been these celebrity realtors that have done next to nothing with that. So again, it's not because you just have a spotlight and then all of a sudden the doors are going to open. It's what do you do and understand about who you are authentically? Can you project out there to your audience and amplify it that you're able to really take it to another spot? And Ryan's done a great job with that, in my opinion, perspective. So he's somebody that I always say, hey, look, if you're looking for examples of an entire media department and team that's really crafted a lot of messaging and understand it. Now, this is truthful to Ryan. This is his brand and his perspective, but you can really see the success leaving breadcrumbs if you just emulate the processes and the way that things are projected out, but being true to you. Again, you do not have to be on that level to really take that. But for me, why I encourage people to follow, it's not just for emulation purposes or ideas, but it really comes down to the information that is curated and then spit to you. So if I opt into a newsletter, I don't have to look. It gets straight into my, inbox. If I'm following on different media platforms and there's great video content, it's like, wow, that was really great for New York. I don't work in New York. I work in, Miami. But guess what? I like the idea. Let me put my flavor and my spin on it and create my own versions of these things. So I think that's just the smartest way to go about it. But eventually, what's going to happen is as you build a brand and it becomes large enough, people are going to start using your content for inspiration. And the circle continues. So what's great about being as individualistic as you possibly can at a certain point is the people that are trying to be carbon copies, all they're doing is just trying to keep up. Well, you're in front of the pack. So it depends on where you're at in your career. If you're newer into the business and you need to do a lot more emulation and understanding, that's great. But if you're already at the top of your game, but you're trying to enhance these things, then be honest and rip yourself apart. Truly just break yourself down and say, does every aspect of this ring true and genuine to me? And I'm not just talking about your website or your landing pages. I'm talking about any piece of content that goes out there through automated emails or drip text campaigns or anything, any physical materials that you're sending out there. The physical and the digital should be mirrored in one and the same. And, that's the big mistake that I find a lot of the higher producers or the seasoned pros is they've been doing it for such a long time and things just work that they don't pay attention to some of the details that could really enhance and make the work a little bit easier. And your brand, what's more important than that? I mean, to me, at the end of the day, that's what people buy into. That's what people are really hiring truly at the end of the day is you as a person. Like, did I connect? Did they show value? Did they do what the job was intended? Do I want to work with them again? Do I want to refer them out? So emotional feelings, I think, come down to it. And again, coming back to the brand, that's what it's about.
I don't know a better way to finish it off, and thank you, mate, for your time. I really do appreciate it and giving everybody the gems. Obviously, your podcast is something that we listen to religiously as well, Real Estate Titans, and your information will be below if anyone needs any help when it comes to marketing. I couldn't recommend Greg any further than I do already. But that being said, mate, we appreciate you on Rethink Real Estate.
Thanks, Ben. Honor and pleasure as always. Blast. Thank you so much.
So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.